Here.
Present.
Here, thank you. Our first item for discussion today is the Assembly Street improvement. Mr. Zach Haney, Transportation Design Engineer, Mead Hunt, and Miss Dana Higgins,
Good afternoon. How are y'all today?
Patrol Agent for the city.
Good. Thank y'all so much for having us today. We wanted to come give you an update on our Assembly Street project, also known as the South Carolina State House Entranceway Project on our state priority list. With me today, I do have Zach Haney, which you had just mentioned, with Mead and Hunt, Jennifer Satterthwaite, as well as Frances Bryan. She's our Assistant City Engineer for Design for the City of Columbia. The first phase of Assembly Street was completed back in 2014, extended from Blossom up to Pendleton. Using CTC funding and GuideShare funding, we engaged Mead and Hunt last summer. And at this point, we just want to give you an update because we are at the point where we want to start engaging stakeholders. We want to make you all aware of the project and where we stand right now. So with that, I'll hand this over to Zach.
You said first update was 2014?
The first phase
Okay.
was Blossom to Pendleton. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Okie dokie. Appreciate the time. We have handouts of the slides, if y'all would like a copy of those.
I would love a
We need
copy.
two, I've got one.
Thank you.
We also have some additional ones if y'all would like some. Oh, you got them. Would y'all like them now or after? Okay. Make sure I know how to drive this guy. All right, good deal. As Ms. Dana was saying, my name is Zach Haney. I am the project manager with Mead and Hunt for the Assembly Street Pedestrian Safety Improvement Project. The project stretches from Lady Street to Pendleton Street, and it is a pedestrian safety and streetscape enhancement project that also, like Ms. Dana was saying, it's a continuation of a previous phase, what we'll call phase one, I guess, from Lady to Pendleton that was completed in 2014. The project study area is about 1,600 feet. Pendleton, Gervais, Lady, it encompasses 4 blocks. One unique aspect is it is immediately adjacent to the State House, where Senate Street is at, so I'm sure y'all are all very familiar with that, so not gonna waste a whole lot of time on this guy. The object and purpose and need of the project is to promote pedestrian safety improvements, put the entire corridor within ADA compliance, have roadway safety improvements, aesthetic enhancements to the corridor, such things like lighting, pedestrian lighting, green space, landscaping, et cetera, and also provide continuity to the Assembly Street corridor, and then create connectivity between the Main Street District and the Vista District. And I forgot to mention, I was going to do this very informally, so if anybody has any questions, please just, here we go. So as I previously mentioned, in 2014, Phase 1 was completed. It was from Blossom Street to Pendleton Street. And there's immediate things that you notice. The median parking was removed. Pedestrian bump outs were added that also facilitated parking on the side streets, or more parking on the side streets. ADA compliance was also included. There are decorative crosswalks, excuse me. They're considered high visibility decorative crosswalks also because the color of the pavement is different from the color of the crosswalk. There was landscaping and decorative lighting as well.
We have been pushing with DOT and at the State House to have a complete shutdown at Assembly and Gervais. Meaning all lanes of traffic stop,
Mhm.
5-way cross, lidded, all lit up for safety reasons, because our number one complaint in the city by visitors everywhere else is being able to get from the Vista to Main Street.
Mhm.
So I hope that as we move this forward, we're continuing to push that, because I think it's the only way, in especially that intersection, that we're really gonna be able to make people feel safe to cross across there. Decorative is just too big of a volume between that intersection. And years ago, the city used to have it, precedence for it, so I hope you consider that as we move forward.
Absolutely. We have looked, we are in the preliminary stages right now. We're in the preliminary stages right now. So later down in the slides kind of show where we're at. And these are the things that we will consider moving forward. A true pedestrian cross, it's very famous in Japan. If I'm assuming that's what you're referring to. That is, if there's the volume to support it, then yes, by all means, it'll be something that we'll put at the top of the recommendation list. But where we're at right now, we're still in the conceptual phases. So these are we call it low-hanging fruit and objectives to move forward with. And then once we get into the nitty-gritty, the weeds, these are absolutely things that we'll take into
Well, I think when
consideration.
we show it from the beginning of what our intent is, it gets ingrained in people's heads so that the only thing they envision is what we're asking for and not give them a way to say no.
Absolutely. Okay. And in moving forward, so a picture is worth 1,000 words. What you see on the right is a completed portion. That's the Pendleton Assembly Street intersection. You can see the crosswalks. The bump outs are a little bit harder to see. The photo on the left shows what's existing one block up. And you can see quite a bit of difference. And one thing I would like to point out, I don't know if this will, nuts. But one thing that the project is planning on doing, as of right now, you have a full crossing with no ADA, no pedestrian refuge, no median islands, nothing. Whereas on the other side, you're cutting that pedestrian crossing distance anywhere from 20 to 30%. So instead of traveling, or a pedestrian having to travel across 6, 7, 8 lanes of traffic, they're only going to have to travel across a parking stall and then 2 or 3 other lanes. Next, the ADT, just like every other street in South Carolina, was affected by COVID. The numbers that are showing here is the trend is starting to come back up. And then also one thing that we thought was notable is FHWA did a study for post-COVID multimodal functions that if you have an opportunity to build something, pedestrians will use it. So I feel like right out here is a perfect example. You put a sidewalk in, bike path in, anything like that, people will use it.
So this is 23,000 cars?
Yes, ma'am. 23,000 vehicles per day along Assembly Street. That is both northbound and southbound. So these are our conceptual typical sections. What you see on the top is the existing. You'll notice the median parking, the parking also on the right and left side of the roadway, and then your 3 travel lanes. What is being proposed is to remove the median parking, maintain the travel lanes, as well as the parking on both the left and right side, or northbound and southbound lanes along Assembly Street. Going back to the picture's worth 1,000 words, what you see on the left is the existing part of Assembly Street that is within the project corridor. You'll notice the turn lanes, the parking, the subtle landscape median, but what you see on the right is the completed product. I wish we would have taken some pictures in the summer so it would have been a little more green, but it's okay. You still kind of get the picture with a controlled access fence across the center median. There's an ADA refuge. There's true curb and gutter, drainage, et cetera, that the project will benefit from. Next, there's a large and a small photo on the left and also a large and small photo on the right. The existing is on the left, the proposed is on the right. You'll notice, like I just mentioned, the crosswalk, that's 12 lanes of traffic. It's almost 130 feet that a pedestrian has to go from one side to the other. So if you notice on the right, there's a refuge island that's there. So they only have to travel a smaller distance. They can wait whether the signal cycles through, or if they can make it all the way across, they can still make it all the way across. This is mainly for ADA accessibility. So the city can safely say, hey, we're doing everything we can for ADA accessibility. Okay, and then the last one, picture's worth 1,000 words. You see on the left side, again, the low-vis crosswalk. The right side, you see pedestrians actually using the refugee island, waiting, seeing cars go by, where they're not stuck in no man's land, as well as the ADA accessibility for anybody that cannot travel all the way across those lanes. So with all that said, the conceptual recommended improvements consist of revitalizing the existing sidewalks, providing ADA compliance throughout the corridor, installing pedestrian bump outs at each intersection, which will also benefit the individuals that are parking along the left and right side of the street. Remove the median parking, eliminate mid-block pedestrian crossings, create pedestrian refugee areas, install lighting and landscaping, again, high-vis crosswalks, and then undergrounding the overhead utilities.
That is key. That was my question.
Okay.
If we're gonna do all of that and then have awful wires in the sky, it's not worth it, so.
Yes, ma'am.
It makes a huge difference, and it makes some of our entryways very welcoming, so it's great to hear that.
Absolutely, yes. And potential benefits was one of the things that definitely wanted to cover so everybody can kind of have something to discuss. The continuity between the Main Street and the Vista Entertainment Districts is key. Another crucial success factor is the pedestrian traffic between Main Street and the Vista and the State House, as well as the pedestrian safety aspect where we intend to reduce rear end, sideswipe, and pedestrian collisions along Main Street by removing that median parking. So as Ms. Dana alluded to earlier, where we are at now, we're in the month 5-6. So we've completed our concept development, our data collection, surveys, utility coordination, et cetera, et cetera. We are now currently working on the plans. And for the first step, this is a 2-step project. The first step will get us to 30% or preliminary plans to where we can identify costs, utility conflicts. Parking is going to be another issue. So we're still, we're in the fledgling phases, which is why we're bringing everybody in right now. The environmental document will work all the way through, and then the, I guess the cherry on top for the first step or first stage is to hit public outreach here within the next several months. This is a nice little roadmap. Starting on the bottom left at step 1, we'll work our way through to step 2. The things that are in blue are up and coming. The things that are in yellow are currently underway, and then, like I said, the data collection, survey, the studies, they have all been completed. And with that, I've taken up 12 minutes of y'all's time, and I appreciate it very much. Can I answer any questions y'all might have?
Yeah, I tell you, Assembly Street and Gervais, it's scary. Can you talk to us, are we going above and beyond for the pedestrian lighting, the flashing, to make cars aware, more than just the standard DOT pedestrian crossings?
Let's see. We are held to SCDOT standards since this is an SCDOT roadway. Anything in and above that are absolutely things that we can entertain. Again, since we're in the fledgling phases, these are the ideas that we want to incorporate.
And you know the latest and greatest in technologies, you could present that to us?
I have, it's one of those things that you can spend all the money in the world and get that Cadillac, or you can do the other end of the spectrum. So it depends on how much money the budgets are willing to spend. And these are some of the things, like we'd said, because we're going to stair-step the project, we can identify costs very, very early. And, yes, ma'am?
There was a funny question, so.
Oh, yeah.
No, I would appreciate, and I think we would all appreciate if you
Sure,
could present
absolutely.
that to us. You
Of
know,
course.
that it's always good when the state puts in such a large portion to get to that Cadillac version, like you said. Well, let's talk about it and see what that premium number is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was my question is, how are we funding this, and what are we looking at in terms of timeline?
I'll let you take that one.
Yes, ma'am. So right now we have $3 million, 609,000 from CTC, 2.4 from GuideShare. Right now we have 13 million that we requested from the State House budget this year. Total project is estimated broadly at 16 million, but of course, when Zach and his team are able to start fine tuning the design, they'll be able to get a little bit more specific about their cost.
And we're thinking, of course, State House pending, funding pending. When would we start this next phase?
For construction drawings, I think that they're ready to start as soon as,
We're working through the conceptual 30%, and then the next step is going to be right away. The idea is not to impact, oh, I'm sorry. The idea is to have zero right-of-way impact since we are working with a relatively existing large footprint, so that's in our favor. And then after that will be construction plans, so we'll have everything buttoned up, ideally within the next 18 to 20 months.
We launch.
Yes, ma'am. Paper to pavement, paper to pavement.
We need to make sure that we keep the governor's office apprised of what's going on. They have a real interest in helping clean up around the State House and make it more presentable when people come. And along with the utility underlying it. So let's make sure that as we move forward, we make sure that somebody in the office is kept up to date.
Is this going to be in parallel with the South Main Street construction project to any extent?
that one's getting kicked off this spring.
Okay.
So this is,
This,
Definitely
hopefully that one's
lagging.
buttoned up before this one breaks ground.
definitely, I would think the construction period is about 18 months for South Main, I believe. So that'll be about, like, we'll be starting our project pending funding by the time South
Within,
Main's
okay.
about theirs. Thank you so much.
Appreciate y'all's time. Thank y'all very much. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Number two, our next item for committee discussion is distance requirements for tattoo establishments, and our own Miss Krista Hampton, Planning and Development Services Director.
Good afternoon, everyone. At the last council meeting, there was a discussion of council to want to look at your current regulations with regard to body piercing and tattoo establishments. And so I'm here just to get some policy direction guidance for you all, perhaps throw out a couple of options for you. Currently, the City of Columbia actually is fairly liberal with regards to these regulations. When you look at other communities, they're somewhat stuck in the past, to be perfectly honest, and lump them in similarly with sexually oriented businesses and relegate them to industrial areas, and limit them pretty significantly and require distance from churches, religious organizations, and the such. So the City of Columbia, while we do have some conditions, only has the spacing requirements between tattoo facilities and then also from the fort, and then 100 feet away from the residential districts. They are allowed in most of our commercial and mixed-use districts, so again, not relegated to those kind of industrial areas. So I provided for you some of those other communities and their regulations so you could see that. So depending on the policy guidance of council, you have an option to go all the way from eliminating the distance requirement between facilities, minimizing it. You could bring it down from 1,000 feet to a lesser amount. The other option, which is what you had previously, is in some of the districts, is you could make it a special exception from the Board of Zoning Appeals. So special exceptions are set out by state law to apply to uses that are permitted, provided that the board reviews them on a case-by-case basis, so that it could be special circumstances would say that it's appropriate, where in others it may not be. And so that is another one of your options. And so I'm here just to kind of listen and provide feedback to you on this issue.
I was reading in Sumter, it says permitted by special exception in commercial and light industrial areas, but then also has a caveat of within 500 feet of residential church, do we know how that's worked for them from a special exception side? Is that?
No, sir, I certainly could contact them to see how it is. You know, we've come a long way from the days when it was a special exception. I mean, perceptions have certainly changed about these facilities from the old days. So some of these ordinances
We
are.
have a lot of options. I guess the issue at hand is we've got somebody who's kind of trapped by not being able to have one closer to one that they already own exist. So
Do we have any examples of types of businesses where, let's say the previous business that was there was the same use, the same permitted use, in this case, a piercing or tattoo? Is there anything in your planning, I guess, world that we could, some language we could include in that to basically say if it was one, it can now be a new one under a new business license?
So that currently exists because if there is a facility, it's considered, if it was lawfully established, if one leaves, another can come in within 12 months. It doesn't lose, so that business can be, let's say it's a restaurant that's in a facility that's no longer allowed. As long as, if the restaurant leaves, another one can come in within that 12-month period.
So what's holding up this issue in 5
It's a new location. It's in a place where there currently is not a tattoo establishment. It's a new business. It would be a new location for a new tattoo establishment.
So it previously wasn't a tattoo or body piercing establishment?
That's not my understanding, no.
See,
How
that's-
long ago?
She'll speak in the microphone.
It was previously a piercing studio that went by the name of 5 Points Body Piercing. Their lease was terminated in November, and I put down the deposit that same month to take over.
So does that change the conversation?
So our zoning administrator will need to look in that.
Okay.
We did not know that before now,
Okay.
so that would have been helpful. But we can certainly look at it.
So we need to verify that and it's a business license, and that should tell us. 'Cause if that's the case, then yeah.
1,000
Yeah.
feet. Okay. Find that out.
Yeah. Can we dig into that? I mean, I think we ought to answer that question before we try to
Absolutely. Had
go-
we been
Yeah, I
asked the
apologize
question,
for
we
throwing
would
that
have,
curveball at
we
you and-
certainly would have answered that question
Yeah.
before now.
Instead
Thanks.
of trying to go and spend 6 months changing ordinance and stuff to try to figure out a way to
Now,
help
if
and
it's
hurt.
not, we'll be back here
Yeah.
again, so we would still like the thinking on the policy guidance.
I'm inclined with the special exception approach, but.
Well, I mean, when you look at it, I mean, we're in 7 allowed districts right now, which is pretty much the majority of the city. When you look at it, other than, it's got the restrictions of residential. I guess the question is this really about a special exception on an individual or a second one? How many is acceptable to have in one area? Because I'm gonna be honest, this is gonna be a conversation we're gonna have about vape shops. How many do you cluster in one area? And so,
I think we find out.
not that they're the same business, it's two totally different, but the question's already come up. So as we think through this, we need to be thinking, do you want to have a special exception based on a second location within the 1,000 feet? And make it specific for single store owner, somebody who owns a second location.
I do caution against that, because once the business is established, it doesn't require that person maintain ownership, so we don't,
But couldn't we do that?
zoning is
Write it
about the use
specifically?
and not the owner, so
But in this case, it'd be a special exception, so
Right.
it'd be a little different.
it would. but
Just
then it
food
would-
for thought.
Right, but then it would still run with the land, it would run with the property once you grant that special exception. You could not
I
take
thought
it,
this special exception only ran with the business as it's operating. If it ceased to operate, then it's not a special.
And
Each
is it a
use has to be
marketable-
a special exception.
it is applied to the property, to the land.
got that correct.
Forever and ever.
Not the business.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, sounds like we need to know the answer.
About the previous
If that's the
business owner.
case, if they haven't been shut down for more than 12 months, then that's a grandfathered in, and that just answers our question. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time chasing
Agreed.
another solution in 90 to 180 days worth of back and forth and public hearings if we don't have to have that.
I'm all
So,
for that.
Yeah, I would love to take a 10-minute recess and find out the answer. Madam Clerk, we're going to adjourn for 10 minutes. See, we need popcorn and lemonade up here today.
Oh, I've heard your name, yeah. I will.
roll, Madam Clerk?
Ready?
I'm waiting on direction. You know, we don't do anything without checking with the clerk first.
Right now, we cannot find a record of the 5 points piercing. We are going to continue to look, so I will leave that up to the policymakers.
My suggestion is that we allow staff to have time to confirm, make sure that there's not a wrong address or something to punch in, so that we've checked all that, because that would make a big determining decision how we move forward, and that we reconvene maybe quickly before our council meeting next week.
Yeah, if, during the research, can we find out length of the business license and then also the lease? I think that's good to know in our decision-making on that.
I don't know that, how would
Prior
we get
lease.
access, how would we get that lease? Does that work for everybody? Because I think we just want to make sure we have all the correct information.
Is DHEC, is there a permit to be gotten from DHEC that we can review?
Yeah, I know that you legally have to keep paperwork for these types of businesses because should something come back and there was a contamination, you have to keep the records to be able to get in touch with clientele to let them know there had been some sort of contamination. It's very rare, but usually it's around 2 years that paperwork has to exist.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great to
Check with DHEC as well to see if they have information on that site.
Absolutely.
All right, with that, we stand adjourned until the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.